Hello viewers. In this video, we explore how web browsing was like in the mid to end 90s under Windows 3.11. For this, we'll use the IBM P75 with its contemporary 66 MHz DX-2 processor and 16 megs of RAM. In the previous video, I talked about the work of Sir Tim Berners-Lee and how that started the internet as we know it today. In that video, we reviewed the first web browser and turned the next station into a vintage web server. Please feel free to watch that video before continuing. It's linked below. For today's video, we'll use the CERN HTTPD running on the Next as a server for testing the vintage browsers that have issues with the modern web. I prepared a selection of browsers from back in the day, including the first browser for Windows, Cello, by Thomas Bruce. We will then continue with NCSA Mosaic, developed by Mark Andreessen and others from 1992 at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Spyglass Mosaic was a licensed variant, intended to commercialize and broaden Mosaic's market share. Its codebase was in turn licensed by Microsoft to develop Internet Explorer 1.0. We of course also review the Netscape Navigator browser that was dominant from the mid to end 90s. Now let's get started. We boot into Windows and begin with the Cello browser. Cello was the first browser on Windows and modeled after the World Wide Web app on the Next. It is a very lightweight software package that easily fits on one floppy disk. Installation is only unpacking the zip file, then we are good to go. The Cello browser starts just fine from the folder where we unpacked it. It has a simple user interface, with some differences to more modern browsers. Links are displayed with a dotted box by default instead of underlining. The back button is actually an up button in this software. It's called the backtrack button. I clicked a link to the Legal Information Institute, which is where Thomas Bruce developed this browser. Unfortunately, it gives a 400 bad request error, which means that the web server doesn't understand the request that was sent. This is likely because its HTTP protocol implementation is too old. Another difference to modern browsers is that there's no address line at the top of the screen. We have to use the Jump to URL menu item for that. Opening frogfind.com gives a 400 bad request error as well. Let's try out the web server on the next station that we set up in the last video. It should be sufficiently old to support requests from this browser. Also, it hosts several websites from the 90s which I downloaded from the Wayback Machine. Unsurprisingly, the very first website works without problems. It used only very basic HTML functions, which this browser all supports. Let's now try Yahoo's website from 1996. As we can see, the CSS code embedded in the page is a problem. CSS was not specified until 1996, when the World Wide Web Consortium published a first standard. Images do render, however the site layout is quite different from what it should look like. Moving on to Silicon Graphics website from 1997. Here things get worse. Not only the CSS code is a problem, but some image formats are unsupported and the page does not really work. There's no point in trying out other websites, so let's close out of here and move on to review the next browser. That's NCSA Mosaic. Installation is simple again. We just copy over the unzipped files to the D drive. It launches from the folder without issues. The UI resembles modern browsers much more. There's the navigation buttons at the top and an address line above the content. However, that address line is not editable. Interestingly, the address field is pre-filled here. Let's check it out. That didn't work. Apparently that referenced website is long gone. Let's try frogfind.com, a website made by Action Retro as a search machine for vintage computers. Alright, that caused the browser to crash. Let's try again. Let me open the application once more. Now, let's check out the prepared websites on the next station. That looks interesting. It's all rendered in a monospaced font, so this browser apparently does not support the HTML styles properly. Don't the links work? What's going on? Do I have to double-click them? Now, this took quite a while, and then it displayed an error message. There's something wrong with the address. Let's try with the fully qualified machine name. Let's see how the Yahoo website looks in NCSA Mosaic. Okay, it has the same issues as before. CSS is not yet supported, and hence the layout is messed up. Let's move on to review the next browser, which is Spyglass Mosaic. It is a larger package than the two others and came on 2 floppy disks. I unarchived them to the network drive already. This software has a proper installation program, so let's run setup and see what it does. That was easy, and it went quite quickly. It is named Enhanced Mosaic and has its own Program Manager folder. Let's fire it up. The splash screen gives credit to the original Mosaic developer, the University of Illinois. Oh look, we got a background pattern on the welcome page, which talks about new features, and that this browser was intended as an embedded client technology. Essentially, that means that this browser could be licensed by other companies to internet-enable their products. We have an impressive feature list here, including tables, text wrapping, background images, and text alignment. Also, this browser claims to be the first one to support progressive JPEG. That format was developed to allow browsers to start displaying the image while it still was loading. It would then build up from the top and fill the space that was reserved for it while other elements of the page were rendering. Let's put this browser through its paces. Again, we go through the File menu to open a URL. We start with the frogfind.com website to see if we can access external content. Oh look, the first browser today that displays the FrogFind main page without complaining or crashing. Action Retro's homepage is not accessible though because of the outdated SSL support that this browser has. Same for Mac 84. Let's search something, maybe Wikipedia. Oh cool, we get a result. That didn't go too well. Let's look up something different. Maybe we can find something on this browser itself. Okay, we got something and it doesn't look too bad. So this page is a Wikipedia article that has been simplified by FrogFind to properly display on vintage computers. Let's now try some of the websites that didn't display in the other browsers. The main page displays with the right HTML styles applied. The world's first website looks good. Let's now try out Yahoo. And again, there are issues with the CSS code. The page body, however, looks okay apart from the weird A characters here and there. The SGI page has issues with CSS code too, and we have some weird characters here as well. However, it is laid out properly and the images are showing for the first time in this test. You can also see the progressive JPEGs being rendered on this page. Moving on with IBM's homepage as of 1997. This looks quite messy. Let's now check out Sun's homepage as of 1998. A lot of CSS code to skip here. The browser is struggling with the load of images on this page. It re-renders the page for each completed image, which takes quite a bit of time. The layout is also not quite right. Time to move on with the next browser. We now take a look at Microsoft's Internet Explorer. I downloaded versions 1.0 to 5.01, covering the time span between 1994 and 1999. Let's install version 1 to see how it looks and performs. The installer is one large file. Let's fire it up. Oh, interesting. This version is apparently the one shipped with Windows 95. I thought I downloaded the Windows 3.11 versions only. Alright, let's move on then. This is version 2.0 for Windows 3.1. Let's install it. Black screen and then nothing? Fine then, let's check out version 3.0. Empty license agreement to accept. Works for me, I guess. But not for the installer, none of the controls work. It raises an error message saying that the file is in use. Maybe it doesn't like to be installed from a network drive. I'll copy it over to the local disk and try again. There we go. Now let's run the installer again. Same error message. Not sure why that is. We have more than enough Internet Explorer packages at hand, so let's move on to version 4. I'll copy it to the D drive right away. There it is, so let's run setup. The installer runs and isn't complaining. Maybe that's a good sign. This takes quite a while, so let me speed that up. Oh, what's that? Application error, call to undefined Dynalink? That doesn't sound right. Let's reboot the machine and try again. Oh no, same issue again. Fine, we have one more version to try, and that's 5.01. I'll copy it to the local disk and install it from there. This package is significantly larger than the other ones. This is 89 megabytes. Copying alone will take about 6 minutes in real time, so I'll speed that up for you. You can actually see the screensaver kicking in 2 times. All right, it's copied. Let's launch the installer. Okay, that was the wrong one. Let's see if we find the Windows 3.1 version of the installer. It's the file right below. I'll hit setup and speed this up again, because the whole process takes more than 10 minutes in real time. I don't want to make you sit through that. I'll run the minimal install. And of course, we have to reboot. The installer is finishing some settings. We got a new program group named Microsoft Internet Tools. Let's launch it. I think it's trying to connect to Microsoft website. That didn't work too well. Let's try FrogFind now. Yes, that works. Let's search for Microsoft. Can we open that page? Doesn't look like it. Can we open Action Retro's homepage? No, doesn't work. Probably outdated SSL certificates again. Then, let's see how our vintage websites look like. Yahoo works fine, no issues with CSS. The SGI website too, it renders fine. It's quite slow though. However, we are using a 1999 browser on a 1992 computer. IBM's website renders nicely too. Let's check Sun Microsystems' website. It displays correctly, but takes quite a long time to complete. Here's Apple's website from 1998. Do you see the animated iMac? I think this is the first time we've seen animated GIFs in this test. This is GeoCities from 1999. Although it is a relatively simple design, it takes considerable amount of time to finish rendering. Now let's take a look at Yahoo from 2001. Something is missing here. Ah, there it comes. The text is bit tiny. Let's try to make it bigger. That did totally not work. I guess that was some JavaScript kicking in. Let's move on then to Amazon, as of 2007. Can we do it? Did it crash? Looks like it's locked up. No, there it comes. So technically, this browser is able to display the page, however the computer is way too slow. Look at the About screen, it mentions NCSA Mosaic and Spyglass still in this version. So Internet Explorer 5 was able to display all the vintage pages we tried out. It does connect to some websites on the internet as well, like FrogFind, without complaining about the HTTP protocol version. However, it has issues with the modern SSL encryption standards that weren't around back in the day. The old SSL levels aren't supported by most of the current websites due to security issues. Now let's move on to the biggest competitor of the 90s, Netscape Navigator, developed by the company that was founded by Mark Andreessen, the author of Mosaic. We begin with Netscape version 1.0, hoping it will run. It is a small software package, comparable to Mosaic and just shy of 1.44 megabytes, which fits on a floppy disk. It comes with a setup program, so let's run that. We'll accept the defaults and let it run. We get a new Netscape program group. Let's launch the application. After making us read the license agreement, it starts to complain about the temp folder, and it apparently can't display its own welcome page. Setting up Notepad as a viewer for text files just brings up an error message again. It's not complaining about the temp folder anymore, but we see web pages in Notepad. Let's check out the web page on the next station. Yes, that works. The minimalistic first website also works. Yahoo also looks okay-ish apart from the CSS code at the top. The SGI web page isn't quite right, but better than in Mosaic. Same for the IBM website. I guess this places Netscape 1.0 somewhere near the Spyglass browser. Let's move on then with Netscape 4.08. This is a large file. Copying and installing take about 20 minutes, which will speed up so that by the magic of editing, it comes down to a minute. A reboot later, we're back in the game with a shiny new Netscape Communicator program group and a ton of new icons, although I deselected all but the browser. Launching Navigator takes quite a bit of time. We create a default profile and let it do what it wants. We're then rewarded with a splash screen and a bit more waiting time until something comes up. Like the other browsers, Netscape can't connect to its server because those are long gone. What you see here is the UI of a very typical 90s browser, and most of the elements are still around in modern browsers. We have navigation buttons at the top, an editable address bar below that, and a favorites bar. Let's see if we can access Google via HTTP. And yes, that works, although quite slowly. The Google logo isn't displaying. Probably it's in PNG format, which wasn't around back in the day. We can run a search, and we get a result. However, the page looks quite messed up, and it's not really possible to select something. Hitting one of the links brings up the usual SSL issue. FrogFind works nicely. Let's enter the same search for Netscape Navigator. We get back a Wikipedia page that's somewhat beat up. Now let's use our test bed on the next station. The first web page works well, as expected. Yahoo comes up as it should, and it's actually quite quick. The About page works but looks messy. Wonder why that is. Look at all the technologies that are bundled with this browser. No surprise it took forever to install. The SGI website looks fine. IBM's website has issues with the text layout. Sun's website looks good and renders quicker than in Internet Explorer. Apple's website works too, and the animation displays while loading. The browser struggles with the GeoCities website and has to re-render it multiple times before displaying it. Also, some styles seem to be missing that were displaying in IE. The 2001 website of Yahoo looked messed up initially. After a reload, it gets better. Overall, rendering the page does take quite a long time, and it doesn't look right. The ultimate test, Amazon of 2007, which brought IE to its limits on this hardware, is a difficult one for Netscape as well. However, we need to consider that the browsers were way outdated in 2007, so the fact that we see something is actually respectable. The layout in Netscape is worse than in IE, actually. Let's have a side-by-side comparison now between Internet Explorer 5.01 and Netscape 4.08. I will need to speed this up in editing because this is bringing the IBM P75 down to its knees. We're looking at Netscape 4.08 on the left side and IE 5.01 on the right side. I tried to click the link to the Sun homepage very quickly after each other in both browsers, so we can compare rendering speed and quality of both browsers. As I said, the limiting factor here is the computer. I think with both resource-hungry apps open, there will be quite some paging going on. However, we can see that IE starts rendering the page earlier than Netscape, which is somehow stuck at reading data from cache. Now that both documents are showing, we can also see IE actually produces a more convincing result, especially if we look at the sidebar. Apple's homepage starts to render sooner in Netscape, but again gets stuck, with IE overtaking. The final rendering is ready quite some time after IE. Let's check out Yahoo of 2001. Netscape finishes earlier at the expense of accuracy. Clearly, the rendering in IE is cleaner than in Netscape and probably closer to how it should have looked like. This video got quite long, so let's wrap it up here. I hope you enjoyed this trip down the memory lane. Please let me know in the comments how you liked this content and what you'd like to see next on the IBM PS2 P75. I'm thinking of either an OS2 parallel install and review or an installation and demo of AIX PC. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.